Okay, John.
I'd like to call the meeting to order at 6 o'clock. John, you want to lead the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Announcements. The Select Board will meet on the following dates. Regular meeting at 6 p.m. September 14 and September 28, 2009. Work sessions prior to the regular meeting will start at 5 p.m. All of the above meetings will be held in Town Hall unless otherwise posted. Weather observations for the month of July are posted in the front lobby at the Town Hall. Town offices will be closed Monday, September 7, 2009, in observance of the Labor Day holiday. Approval, August 10th, let's see, the minutes. We have the work session minutes for August 10th. August 10th. I don't have the work session minutes. Did we have a work session?
You got the work session?
Does anyone have any? I got the regular minutes here, but the work session. Are there any comments on the minutes of the work session for August 10? There being none. Can I have a motion for approval? Been moved by John.
Second.
Seconded by Valerie. Those in favor of approving the work session minutes for August 10, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? The minutes of August 10 work session are approved. The minutes of the regular meeting for August 10th. Are there any comments, changes, suggestions, etc.? There being none, can I have a motion for approval? John Kelly has moved.
Second.
Seconded by Darrell. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? The minutes are approved. All right. Agenda review.
Another work session.
Pardon?
Work session from August 17th still has to be.
One more work session.
One more.
Oh, where are they? I've only got the 10th. You have the 17th work session minutes? I have them in this. All right, the minutes for the August 17, oh, that was a special meeting we had at Town Hall. Are there any comments, suggestions, changes, etc.? There being none, do I have a motion for approval? John Kelly's moved to approve. Second?
Second.
Valerie seconded. Those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The minutes for the August 17 work session are approved. All right. Is there any, we have an agenda review. Are there any agenda items that you wish to comment on, or?
You have to add the 11th officer grant,
Okay.
and you also have to put down the T grant recommendation from the planning board.
All right.
Well, actually, you can leave that one off. You can handle that under the public hearing. Just the first one. 11th officer.
All right.
I'm gonna put that under other business. 11th officer.
Yeah, we can do
Yeah,
that
we'll put it in with,
first on the business.
okay, it'll precede the fire department. All right. Now, what about the transportation enhancement grant is under the public hearing, which we'll have at 6:30. So we now are prepared to appoint a PSU part-time officer, Mr. Jesse Renaud.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening. How are
We're
you?
going to take your last few drives up and down Highland Street in the next couple of days to enjoy the free flow of traffic.
Yeah.
I hope this is going to be the last time that we'll be before you for a while to make an appointment. This will bring our part-time officer allocation up to strength. Jesse Renaud is beginning his senior year at Plymouth State University. He's an outstanding student. He's maintained a 3.5 average while working for us as a student officer for the last year. And you may have seen him trying to keep people in line over at Dunkin' Donuts over at Tenny Mountain Highway for quite a while. That's what he does in his spare time. Jesse is currently attending the part-time academy in Littleton. He'll graduate in November with Mr. Guarneri, whom you appointed 2 weeks ago. And we're very happy to have a bright young man like this who wants to continue his career, stay in our community, and continue to serve the university.
Welcome.
Thank you very much.
Jesse.
Appreciate that.
Where's hometown? Where's your hometown?
Originally, I'm from Rochester, Massachusetts. Now I live in Campton,
Yep.
so very close.
Very good. And this is your last year?
Yeah, it's actually my 5th year as a double major.
So you're going to be a part-time officer at the university. Where are you going for graduate work, or?
I'd like to go to graduate work. I probably won't do that right away. After I graduate, I plan on going back to the full-time academy.
Good. You have the appointment paper.
You can make a motion.
I'd entertain a motion to appoint part-time PSU police officer Jesse Renaud.
So moved.
Been moved by Darrell,
Second?
seconded by John. Those in favor of the appointment, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Congratulations.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Welcome aboard.
Thank you.
Thanks, man. Thank you. All right, 6:30. Public hearing. Do we want to move the public hearing up or just move on to other?
We're gonna move on. So we've got set times.
No, that's when you come out.
Okay, the public hearing will be at 6:30, so we'll move on to the, let's see, do we have land use permits are available for review in the lobby at the Selectman's office? Chairman's comments. I don't really have much other than we had the duck race went off at the amphitheater on Saturday. I think the Rotary made, when all was said and done, a little over $3,000. I don't know who, whoever won the $1,000, I didn't recognize the name, but was he one of yours? No?
I wish it was me.
Yeah. But, and we got through the day without bringing out the defibrillators for the guys that were in the river going up and down. I thought we had lost Steve Rand a couple times, but he managed to survive it. And they recovered most of the ducks, which I think they rented the ducks for 40 cents apiece, and any lost ducks were going to cost the Rotary $3. And they had quite a few of them got away, but they rescued them before they crossed the line into Bridgewater. But it was a successful event and will probably be an annual event in town. We'll see. We have no visitors. Purchase orders are all signed. So we'll move on to other business. We have a public hearing in 20 minutes. There has been a request for the board to approve a grant of slightly over $200,000 for an 11th officer for the police force. This grant would require the town maintain 11 full-time officers, and it would pay salary, benefits, and initial training cost. And the fourth year would be, we're obligated for 4 years. The grant covers 3. We've estimated the cost to be about $4,000 a year for the first 3 years, and then $75,000 for the fourth year. So you're looking at a total of $86,000 to $87,000 cost to the town. We had a discussion of this at our work session, but we've opted not to vote until the open session. And I would ask anyone that has any comments to speak now or forever hold your peace. And we can ask for public comment as well. But would anyone like to say anything at this point?
Well, I'd just like to say that this grant was brought before us about 2 weeks ago, and that the board has spent, we actually called a special work session to discuss it, and spent probably about an hour, a little over an hour on it. And then tonight, in the work session before this meeting, we discussed it further. So there's been quite a bit of thought, and several of the board here have done some due diligent work, and they've done, and I think as a whole, we've covered it pretty well. We had a lot of input from the chief and of the department. So
the statistics, there's 12 towns in Plymouth that were granted money under this program. Plymouth was number 10 of the 12 and was granted $200,792. There were a number of factors that were weighed in deciding which towns got the grant. I can't remember how many applied, but was it 50?
58.
58 towns applied. We were one of the 12 who received a grant. The final index rating for Plymouth was 64.6%, which compares favorably to all but a few of the towns. We're in the 65 to 90% percentile were granted the money. At our work session, the discussion was, do we need an 11th officer? That was one of the issues. What can we gain by putting on an 11th officer in terms of reducing overtime or controlling overtime a little better than we have? And I guess most of the members have pretty much made up their minds, so if you want to comment before we take a vote.
I'll just restate some of what I said earlier. So I'm in support of it, I guess in the near term, handling the overtime issue, but in the longer term, just handling any projected rise in crime that several state officials have spoken to, and just as well to support the policing plan that was put forth by the chief that was basically approved at another level. So I'm in support of this on those 3 grounds.
John?
I have no comment.
I'd just like to add that you know, again, this grant application was evaluated by the Department of Justice, looking very carefully at, you know, the community's fiscal needs and also their crime and community policing needs, and that's where the policing plan came into play. I'm sure that it certainly wasn't just arbitrary factors that were considered in the decision to award Plymouth the grant. It was very clearly stated and quantifiable factors that were considered.
Now, Paul, if this is approved, does it go to special town meeting?
Yes.
Okay. So it's either going to be approved, or if it's not approved, then it's dead right here.
I'd just like to mention that it is a 4-year project. It is committing the town to the 4th year around $74,000 plus the $4,000 each year, so it puts it up to around $86,000. And that's a commitment that we're making by hiring that 11th police officer. And that it does have a price tag on it on the fourth year. So, and I would just like to say that in this economy and things that it's hard for me to support the 11th police officer.
Well, I would suggest then that we have a motion to approve the grant for...
I make a motion that we do not approve the grant.
You're going to move to not approve the grant. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we do not approve the grant for $200,792 over a 4-year period where we commit to 11 police officers. Those in favor of not approving the grant signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
3-2. The grant is not approved. Moving on. Public hearing. We're still 15 minutes, so
We have more. Fire.
so, you know, invite the fire chief up. Accept a bid for Specialty Vehicle, Inc. for new ambulance, $142,023. Good evening.
Glad to see that the top is up on your...
Yeah, thank you. You're not ready for a shower
Made
today.
him put the top up so the sun would be out.
Yeah, well, yeah, you're right. If I'd have left it down, it would have rained.
Exactly.
That's all right. So what do you have for us?
Basically, this is just bringing the board up to date that we went through the lengthy process of building some specifications to replace the 2002 ambulance. We got 4 bidders that came in the specialty vehicles, which is Road Rescue. We've been buying ambulances from them for quite some time and very happy with the performance of that vehicle. They were the second lowest. They weren't the lowest one, but the lowest vehicle was from Yankee Fire and Rescue. When we asked these individuals to bring us a model to take a look at, no response. When we checked around to find out if anybody has purchased vehicles from this company, we either got, I wouldn't do business with them, we didn't, nobody around has. Road Rescue is one that has been proven for this area. Their bid came in at $142,23. They've given us $13,500 trade-in on the old 2002.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Wasn't there some discussion about keeping the old ambulance?
There was, but we don't have any place for it right
If
now.
we had a building in place.
Right. That's still in a plan down the road, but So at this time, the committee, which was headed up by Captain Olmsted, him and the rest of the crew in the fire department did a very good job of going through the specifications. We had a meeting, and the committee and myself, we all decided that the best bang for our dollar is going with specialty vehicles, and I just wanted to let the board know that we've going to follow through the rest of the way with specialty vehicles, which means that they will produce the finalized bid package. We'll have to go through it letter by letter to make sure that everything's in place, and that number we may be able to cut down even more. So once that's finalized, then I'll be back here in front of the board with the purchase order with the final number. I'll be signing once the board just...
After we budget, 145?
150.
150.
Right.
So we've accepted the bid, or we're going to vote on accepting it?
You have to vote on accepting the bid.
That way I can sign the contracts with that company.
All right, so
I make a motion that we accept the bid of 142,023.
Specialty Vehicles, Inc.
Specialty vehicle.
Second?
Been moved and seconded to accept the bid from Specialty Vehicles, Inc. for a new ambulance, $142,023. Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The bid is accepted.
And like the chief mentioned, the reason why you don't have the purchase order, which we usually do, is the chief's still working on getting the price dropped down a little
Yeah,
bit more.
he's, okay.
We're still finalizing it. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Chief. Brian Murphy, Riverside Park, Plymouth Area Renewable Energy Initiative. Where's Brian?
Got lost.
He went home with the...
I guess
He will be back.
We'll be back. All right. Well, we have a public hearing at 6:30, so other than that, here he comes. You're just in the nick of time. We were about to vote whether we were going to terminate your position.
I thought this meeting started at 6:30. Evidently, I was mistaken. I left a file in the reader area for you folks concerning the riverfront amphitheater and the kiosk entrance that the Rotary Club had put up. One of the things that was reserved, in spite of the appointment of the building official, was the select board having the say on signage on public lands, and this touches that. So basically what they're proposing is to put the Rotary symbol with the name of the park underneath it on the front. At the same time, there's a whole bunch of stuff going on here. They're going to install, with the Plymouth Area Renewable Energy Initiative, a photovoltaic panel on top of it's a gable structure, so one side will have this 5 by 30-inch panel, I believe.
Yeah, the south side.
So what they do is enable the amphitheater to run just about electricity free. According to their computations, they'll get overnight lighting plus 22-hour, enough power for 22-hour concerts. And then in the wintertime, when nothing's happening, it'll run the meter backwards, and the co-op will pay for the electricity. So this is one of the few gifts to the town that actually isn't going to end up costing us an arm and a leg. But basically, this requires the Board of Selectmen. Also folded in there is the energy package with the co-op, where they will give an instant credit of, I believe it's $3 per kilowatt hour generating capacity back to the entity, and we are the entity. The Renewable Energy Initiative, since they fronted the money for this project, would like that money to be reimbursed for them. Just it'd be a wash through the town, basically.
What was the cost of this, the renewable energy What they? They're the people that are putting up the solar panel.
Right. And
58.
well, that's the amount that we'll be getting back. Of course, I can never find the information when we need it. They did a whole, and it's amazing the studies that they do for those. They show you how much sunlight you'll get. They figure it'll be fully illuminated about 83% of the day.
Wow.
Let's see, total cost. The project total was $2,345. And that was prior to any rebates. So the cost per watt of installing this at this point is $11.66.
Now, they want the co-op's reimbursement to be paid directly to them to defray the cost.
That it would go to them. I think it would have to be issued to the town, and we would have to run it in and run it out.
Cut them a check.
Right.
The cost is $11 per watt until...
Yeah, I'm not really sure how these read, Daryl, but I think that's
over
installation cost, and it would be defrayed.
Over a year? Or?
This is just straight off the bat.
So they would get it all, forever.
Well, we own the meter, or the meter is in our name down there.
Yeah.
So any of the savings in the future would be billed against the town's use of that meter, which is hooked directly to the light that's down there.
Yeah, that's about the only thing we run, don't we?
We're the account holder.
Well, it'll take the cost of the 20 concerts and the lighting of the kiosk, and in the wintertime, the refunds will go back to the town. The only thing we don't keep is the rebate.
Wait a minute.
They want the rebate and to be reimbursed, and then everything else is ours.
Correct.
Okay.
So how much is the rebate?
$480.
Okay, and that would be they would get the rebate and...
That's it.
That's it?
That's...
Okay.
From that point forward,
then the
town
gets all the credits and
the bill.
They're not looking for the rest of the money to recoup.
They aren't looking for the $2,345?
No, they are not.
No.
Just a $480 rebate.
Yeah, all right, I see. Okay.
The rest is a donation to the town.
There's also going to be signage, right, as I mentioned, the Rotary symbol on the front of it, and there'll be an informational sign like you see at the nature walks, about 3 feet high with a placard on it, probably under plastic, kind of explaining how the system works and naming their partners in it, which the town will be.
So they're going to front about $1,800 of the
Correct.
cost.
But because it's a rebate going through the town, the board needs to vote,
Yeah, we have to vote to refund
refund the rebate.
I don't have a, should we have a motion to that effect?
You have to.
I'll move to refund the rebate to the Area Renewable Energy Initiative for the solar panels on the amphitheater entrance.
Second.
Could we add to that motion, it's $480, is that what it is?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, yeah, the rebate of $480.
And for the
also-
purposes, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
For purposes of housekeeping, could you also make a motion to accept or approve the signage?
Yeah, I haven't seen the signage. It's a rotary, it's got a thing about this big.
Right.
And then there's a sign under it that, what's that say? Plymouth Rotary Amphitheater or something?
I think that they would take direction from the board as to what the name of it is. In other words, I think the official name is the Riverfront Amphitheater,
Yeah.
and maybe that should...
Well, with the rotary, the rotary sign is, I guess it's sort of big and ugly, but I mean, it'll do the job. But I think the other sign should stipulate that it is a Town of Plymouth Amphitheater.
You want to do that separate motion? This one's financial, that
I have a
one's...
motion on it.
You have a motion on the floor already.
Oh, all right. So the motion on the floor, are those in favor? This is the $480 rebate. Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So the motion to refund the rebate is passed. Now we're into the signage.
Motion for a sign as approved by the design of the board.
Yeah, Has anybody submitted that?
Only the sizes.
Okay. There's 2 signs. One's round and the other one is...
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion that we approve the signage based on future approval of the design.
Of the design.
Of the design, so.
Yeah, so we ought to see it before we...
Or we're just approving the
rotary symbol's fairly
approving the
standard.
presence of signage. Later on, we'll approve details of it.
Yeah.
But we're saying go ahead with signage. We approve that there'll be signage.
So we don't need a motion at this point to do that until we get the design.
We do.
You do.
I'll make it abundantly clear to them that they need to run this by the Board of Selectmen prior to actually installing it.
Yeah.
So Darrell's motion's on the floor.
What do we need a
Paraphrase
motion?
that.
What do we need a motion for? We don't
To
have a
begin,
sign.
to start the signage process, basically.
All right. Anyone second Darrell's motion?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to... Can you read your motion, please?
To approve the initialization of the signage process for the riverfront.
Motion to approve the signage for the amphitheater entrance cover.
Tentative to the approval of the design by the Board of Selectmen.
Yeah, I don't understand why we have to do that. I mean, why don't we just get the signage and approve it and do it all
They
in
can't
one
start
step?
until we say they can start. Once they start, then we say do it this way or that way, so.
All right. Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion is approved. Whatever.
Mr. Chairman, would you initial those 4 copies at the top, please?
6:30.
And this one as well.
I feel like a lawyer at a closing. Say anywhere. It doesn't mention the number in here anywhere, does it?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Oh,
Any other questions on this?
no. We're going to make a lot of money on that electricity after we get the $480.
Oh, yeah. Thank you.
Okay. All right, 6:30. So I'm going to call a public hearing on the Transportation Enhancement Grant for road and sidewalk improvements along South Main Street, Green Street, and Highland Street. Miriam, would you like to give us a thumbnail sketch of this whole thing?
The Plymouth Planning Board met on Thursday, and we had a public hearing then. And the point was to see if there was public support for this grant, and also, at the end of the public hearing, to make a recommendation to the Board of Selectmen. And I would say to the Board of Selectmen, after your public hearing, that you can make a recommendation to direct me either to proceed with the grant or not to proceed with the grant. What I said was the Planning Board met Thursday, August 20th. They had the public hearing, and based on the public hearing, they determined that the project was worthwhile and that we do have the money in our budget, so they're recommending to the Board of Selectmen to go forward with the grant. And that passed by a 4-2 vote with 1 abstention. What the project is in 2006, the town contracted with an engineering firm, SEA, to study the downtown and see where we needed improvement. This is, they were looking at safety, they were looking at efficiency, they were looking at stormwater drainage, making sure everything's working the right way. And from that study, they came up with a number of recommendations. One of their most important recommendations was to look at this area here, which is, I'm calling it Highland Street Extension. I don't know if everyone knows it by that name, but this is Highland Street here, this is Anderson's Bakery, and this is the Senior Center. So some people call it Green Street. Green Street runs here in front of the courthouse and then goes up here, or maybe it's called Highland Street Extension. But I think we all know what we're talking about because it's Anderson's to the Senior Center, so that road. And then they also talked about sidewalk here. It's a certain width here, maybe 4 or 5 feet, then all of a sudden it narrows. So we were talking about having this have the same length, so 6 feet wide here. And then the final recommendation was with the sidewalk, when the courthouse project went in, they put in a sidewalk, but then they just stopped. They ran out of money and they just sort of stopped it right here. So we're talking about continuing the sidewalk here in front of the amphitheater, 6 foot wide. And then this is the main part of the project, is in front of Anderson's Bakery, to provide sort of a raised bump out. Right now it's just striped, no parking, but provide this as a raised bump out that would be a little bit safer, provide sidewalk here, allow for people to enter Rand's parking lot here, provide like a little bit of an island here, a sidewalk here, crosswalk, and then also fix different drainage improvements. There's some catch basins, but they're not working right, so we've got to shape it down a little bit. The reason why this project was chosen out of the ones from the recommendation from the study is that we have the funds to do it, and also it's a high priority area. This, the reason this came up is that it's a TE grant, and we've been waiting based on that study for a TE grant to become available. We used to get TE grants every year. It used to just be an annual grant. But it hasn't been available since 2004. Just the economy changed and the grant dried up. However, now with the economic recovery proposal or grant system, this grant money is now available. So it's an 80-20 grant, which is a really good opportunity because a lot of our grants are 50-50. 80-20 means the government provides 80% of it and the 20% comes from the town. And as I said before, I looked at what our existing budget is and what we could afford to put to this grant, and that was $50,000 would come out of the highway department. I have talked to the highway manager about this, and he was in agreement with this project. We all walked it together. He, the engineer, myself, town citizen. The federal share would be $200,000. So in other words, for the town paying $50,000, they're really getting a $250,000 project out of that. This project's been on the books since 2005, so an agreement letter was already signed with all of these abutters, meaning Anderson's and Rand's and Senior Center and the Penny Glass building up here. And that was signed in May, June 2005. Also, I sent out notice letters to all the abutters to notify them of the public hearing. And I personally talked with Steve Rand of Rand Hardware. I talked to the owner of Anderson's Bakery, and I talked to representatives at the Senior Center. These key stakeholders are not opposed to applying for the grant, but they would like to be consulted when project details are being determined. They have, specific detailed concerns that we can work with the engineer. For example, with snow removal, I know Mr. Rand had a concern here, so we might have to look at design of how we're going to take care of his need, and then also taking care of the safety of the pedestrians that use this way here. The grant is due September 15, so that's why I need the direction from the Board of Selectmen on the public hearing, as if you want me to go forward or not, because if you want me to go forward, then I need to get started. That's it. So if you have any other questions, just let me know.
How many, how many people will be, how many grants or people will be after this grant?
Oh, okay. They're going to do, what DOT decided is that they would have one grant per region. So the regional planning commissions all informed their communities that there's this money available and solicited grants from them. We're part of North Country Council. There's 12 other grant proposals, so we have a chance of 1 in 13 to be selected by North Country Council. And North Country Council has a point system, so who's ever the highest point getter, then that would be their number one recommendation. And then that number one recommendation would go to DOT, and then DOT is going to look at the top from all the regions, so I think that's 7 or maybe 9 regions. And either they'll base it on that or their executive council might use a different criteria. So I don't know. So there's not a guarantee that we're going to get this. We're competing against 12 other communities.
Is this sidewalk work, is that all asphalt, or is it, I mean, what kind of curbing are you talking about? I'm trying to figure out how you came to how this thing arrived at $250,000.
That was, it includes the engineering work and the design work and construction. We don't have to obtain right-of-way, it's existing right-of-way, but the details of the material, I don't know. I mean, we were talking about with the crosswalk, to make it consistent with the crosswalks we have downtown, so using that, we're going to be switching to concrete, and we're going to print the concrete. Is that the new? Mm-hmm. So it would be similar to what we have in the rest of downtown.
But as far as you know,
This is curbing here too, so it's sidewalk and curbing.
Now, what do you mean by curbing? Granite or just blacktop curbing?
Yeah, I mean, granite curbing was what was put in the proposal, the estimate, the granite curb. But if we get the grant, we would know if we were awarded the grant in February, and then since they'll let us know in February, then we would put it on the March meeting to get those funds specifically designated for the grant. That would be that $50,000. And then we can start construction in October 2010, or not start construction, start the grant. And what that means is you send out the RFPs, the request for proposal, to engineering firms, and that's when they'd be working out the details, so we know specifically what the materials are. This is just the concept here.
So.
Oh, and I'm sorry, I left out one part too. Also working on the railroad crossing over here too. It's not even, so we're talking about.
So the grant is for $200,000, and the project is going to cost $250,000 basically, right?
Yeah, correct. The total project's $250,000.
That is the initial cost of it. Now, who pays for the additional cost if there are additional costs? Because you only have a grant of $200,000.
Right. So
would it be the
what
town?
I'm thinking is you could craft your agreement with the engineers to say not to exceed. So when we did the request for proposal, you make it clear that it's not to exceed this set amount. So if it exceeded it, then it'd be at the engineer's expense because we crafted the agreement as not to exceed. So in other words, maybe worst case would be maybe he can't do the part on Main Street, or maybe he can't do this part here.
So then you would have to go back in for another grant. I guess what my biggest question is it so ambiguous? You don't know whether you're going to have to push that retaining wall back. You don't know you don't know the cost of pushing that retaining wall back. You don't know the cost of the total project. And the grant is just $200,000. So, and if then we can start skimping on some part of that project. So you're not really going to put all of the project that won't all be completed, maybe. So now we'd have to go back in, and either the town would have to pay for the difference, or you'd have to get a different grant. The other thing I'd like to really bring to light, and that is the $50,000 has not been designated specifically for this project. This is for sidewalk improvements and sidewalk repairs. And there are a lot of sidewalks in the town of Plymouth that need repairs and so forth. And since the road agent is new in town, I really would like to have him come in front of the board and say specifically that he does not need that money for any other reason at all, for any repairs or any sidewalk improvement anywhere in town, so we can eliminate that problem and that money can go specifically, because you keep saying that money is available, the money is available, the money's been budgeted, the money's been available. That money at the time of the budget was for sidewalk improvements and repairs. It had nothing to do with this project. So consequently, you're going to be robbing other projects that he must have had, some road agent must have had some idea of some of the sidewalks that needed to be done at the time that the budget was proposed. So that project right there was not even thought of as far as the budget is concerned. It was for other sidewalks, to my understanding.
Miriam, so there was a study done in 2003. Can you speak to some of the information in that study?
Sure, I can pass around that study.
This was presented to be an area of interest, or an area that needed...
Correct. It's called the South Main Street Feasibility Study, and it's by SEA. And I can just pass this around. They identified a number of areas, and I haven't done this in a vacuum. I mean, I met with the highway manager, and we walked it together, and then I also met with the town engineer. So in terms of this figure, $250,000 is not something that was picked out of the air. The engineer walked the project with the highway manager. The highway manager said that he is willing to contribute $50,000 for this project, and the engineer came up with the numbers based on the way that engineers come up with numbers. It's it wasn't pulled out of a hat or anything. He ran his numbers, and that's the amount that he came up with. The grant doesn't have to be $250,000. The grant is for whatever you need the money for. So I don't know if that was unclear or not.
But Miriam, you said the highway department said they would come up with the $50,000. I'm a little confused, because he's got $50,000 or $60,000 in his budget for this year to do repairs to sidewalks, et cetera, and there are a considerable number of sidewalks that still need repair.
But I think if you look at the timeline of the grant and all that, if you allocate $50,000 to $60,000 each year, and say there's $60,000 that's been allocated this current year, that would go to whatever needs to be done this year. That same amount is still ready next year. This grant doesn't release until that point. So I would, not to read Peter Furmanick's mind at all, but I'm sure the logic is that you do your sidewalk repairs this year, and next year you're going to have the same allocation or a similar allocation. You use it for this sort of thing.
Yeah, that's the other thing. What is the timing? When does this project start
October
to
2010.
expend money?
Okay.
Is it this fiscal year or next?
No, it'll be not. Okay, they'll announce the winner, the grant recipient in February.
Right.
So if Plymouth gets the grant, then we would put it on the meeting for the next budget.
So it'd be
year.
next March, it'd be on the town.
Yeah.
So it'd be in the
March
budget for 11-12 or whatever, 10.
March 2010, okay? That meeting,
Right.
the town would say, yes, we will designate this $50,000 for this project.
So the money
It's
that's...
not coming out of this year, it's coming out of...
Okay, the money that's in the budget this year is not going to be expended on this project any way, shape, or form.
Right. Because we won't even find out about this until February, so that it gives us time to put it on for town meeting in March, and we can't expend any funds until October 2010. And at that point, October, we're already coming at the very end of construction season, so then we're just talking about October, we'll send out the RFPs, which would be to the engineering firms, and get their estimates.
So this isn't going to happen until 11...
so then it would be 2011 spring.
Spring of 11.
Yeah.
But it's feasible to see how he would say this would be part of his budget.
So it's not going to affect the highway funds for this fiscal year.
Correct.
The question is the town, which they can decide at town meeting, are they prepared to put up the additional $50,000 over and above? Let's assume we're going to need another 50 or 60 in 10, 11 to do sidewalk repairs, et cetera, then we're going to have to go to the town meeting for an additional, it'd probably be $100,000 or $110,000.
We allocate it every year, don't we?
Yeah.
We have a sidewalk allocation, not every year,
As needed.
as needed.
Now, if we apply for that grant, then do we have to, in this fiscal year, in this budget, have the $50,000?
They want to see that.
Right. Okay, that's,
So,
What do you mean they want to see it?
That it's
in other
available.
words, they want us to know, they want to know that we applied for that grant for $200,000 this year, that we have the $50,000.
Towards sidewalks.
It wouldn't be this year's budget, it'd be next year.
No, but you got to show, it's been allocated
Yeah, but you
for
need to show
sidewalks
that it's been
now.
allocated
Yeah.
for sidewalks. I know, but they still want you to,
Yeah.
But are we going to commit that money?
No, it has to exist, allocated. So if we go on an as-needed basis, or if we had been going on an as-needed
Yeah.
basis in the past 6 years, we wouldn't have gotten this money. Because we happen to have an allocation sitting this past year, we're eligible. If we had been going on status quo, we would have nothing and we wouldn't be eligible.
But the money we have in the budget
Doesn't get
this
spent for
year
this.
is going to be expended, I'm assuming, on projects other than this that are already
If the plan,
greatly in need.
well,
Right.
he's still coming up with a plan for like the Highland sidewalks.
ADA approval crosswalks.
Yeah, crosswalks and sidewalks on Main Street.
Starting
and
on
other.
Highland Street.
Yeah, okay. That money is in the budget, and that money's going to be expended whether or not this project is accepted by town meeting.
Right.
So this is a next year budget issue. And that's going to be decided at town meeting. I mean, the highway department's got to come up with what he needs to maintain the sidewalks in 10, 11, plus the $50,000 for this.
Right.
So my thought is, I mean, it seems like a heck of a lot of money, but that's beside the point. I think we could go along with this to the extent the town meeting's going to make the decision in March.
But if the board recommends it, they normally go along with the board.
Yeah. I mean, if we recommended it, well, I don't know. I mean, you know, there's going to be a lot of if we don't recommend it, it doesn't go to town meeting. If we do recommend it, it does.
right. And also, just to clarify, I just want to, this is a reimbursement grant, so it's not like they're going to give us $200,000.
Right.
We have to have the $200,000.
We got to start digging holes and spending money on blacktop and curbing and stuff like
Yeah,
that.
we have to,
You have to have
We
$250,000.
$250,000, that they'll reimburse us 80% of what we spent.
I mean, my concern when I first talked about this was, is this going to take the highway department's money for 9, 10 and tie it up? And we've got a lot of stuff that has to be done with that money that you know, we can't allocate to this. This is a whole different fiscal year. So, I mean, then it just comes down to a question, is this a worthwhile project? And that's an individual decision. But if we decide to vote for it, yeah, we approve it, but that doesn't necessarily mean town meeting's going to buy into it, because they're liable to see a $100,000 highway department budget as opposed to 50 or 60 to cover the additional 50,000 on this.
Can I?
So-
Go ahead. Paul.
Do we have to give a guarantee that we have the money?
They want us to show that we're good for the money. So it is part of the grant application that we have to show that we have 50,000 in our highway budget
Already.
for sidewalks.
Already.
Yeah, that's the way it's written, yeah.
What's that mean?
That's the,
The 50 that's in there now counts.
that's
for
where
us.
the clarity, you know, because we have 60 already, that's,
Yeah, but we've probably got 60,000 in work to do this year. I mean, theoretically, if we tie this money up and Peter can't go out and do anything
Right.
this year, which is not acceptable as far as I'm concerned, because we've got a lot of stuff out there that needs work.
Can I ask Paul, in regards to the revenue sharing that the state will not be paying the town of Plymouth, in somewhere around $500,000, as I understand it. How many years has that been? Okay, so that's 2 years. So
This year and next.
this year and next. So we've already been penalized $500,000 that might affect the tax rate. And if we do another $50,000, that's just going to irritate it that much more.
But if this is turned down by town meeting, because they don't, because the state's taken $400,000 a year out of our hide for 10, 11, and 11, 12, then it's a moot point whether we have the $50,000. I mean, so we show we have $50,000, but we don't show that we're not going to spend it this year. Do we have to essentially put that money into escrow for this to happen, or?
Wow.
I mean, that's the question.
I don't know how to answer it all.
As far as I'm concerned, the money we have budgeted now is more than, it's been more than allocated with what's got to be done, right? I mean, we've got a lot of stuff in this town that needs work. So yeah, we got $50,000, but we're gonna spend it this year. But the whole process is, it seems this is, we're a year ahead of ourselves, so town meeting's the one's going to make the decision.
But if you see this as an investment in the downtown area, the whole state trends of not revenue sharing or revenue sharing less, it's a way to spend money and get some money. They're going to take money that they're already being.
Yeah.
And this is a way to say, okay.
Well, I think that
normally you would have taken 100. Now you're going to take 80. Sorry, you're going to take.
But I mean,
20.
as an investment, assuming we have time to turn this over to the taxpayers to say yes or no, I mean, $200,000 is a pretty good deal if we only have to put up 50 to get it, and infrastructure, stuff like that. But I'm not sure why we have to show that we have $50,000 in our budget now, because our budget now has nothing to do with this.
But it shows that sidewalks are a priority. Alternative pathways are something that you're looking at. You can't.
And this is work I think ought to be done, but
they're trying. They need to see that financially, which is probably why we'll show up on the North Country's list of.
The other thing I'd like to bring to light, and that is, this will not be a sidewalk as most people would imagine a sidewalk would be. A lot of this is going to be just a painted sidewalk, because the cars entering and leaving the back of Rand's store and other stores there would not be able to have a raised sidewalk. It will be just a painted sidewalk. So there won't be a lot of the sidewalk work that actually would be a raised sidewalk.
But if you've passed through that area without a car recently, it's very confusing for a non-motor.
I think that a lot of that confusion is because of Rand's rental equipment on that corner. And especially when they have their trucks there hitching up that equipment. And I think that causes more confusion than people walking up and down.
Well, Mr. Chairman, can I make a suggestion that, since it's a public hearing, that we ask the public if there's anybody that wants to speak for or against it, and then after that we can continue our discussion.
All right.
People could shed some light on a lot of our questions.
I have one question for Brian. The storm sewers that you were talking about that need work, are they part of the thing Steve Rand's been talking about, that he's got storm sewers that are under his building or something that has nothing to do with this?
No.
Okay. All right.
Rand's storm sewers that need work are over here. Basically over here. I'm talking about the ones that are here.
Yeah, okay. All right. So is there anyone that would like to comment on this project? Mike? You look like you're ready to say something. Huh? Mr. Hool?
Bill Hool, Plymouth resident. I've had about 10 years experience with TE money. You recall, I spent a number of years on the North Country Council, and we brought a great deal of money to the town of Plymouth from the TE program over those years, and even before I got to that point. The overall North Country monies that have come through TE, by far and away, Plymouth has received probably more than what other towns would consider its fair share. That having been said, I still think the project that has been proposed and which has been under consideration since 2004, and for which plans were prepared by me, as a matter of fact, back in 2004, and approved by the board that you sat on, Butch, to do much of what was proposed to be done in this proposal effort. It wasn't quite as elegant as this is. This is doing it right. What we had proposed to do was less costly, but was addressing pedestrian safety issues. And that pedestrian safety issue has only grown significantly worse since 2004, 2005, with the completion of the bridge. And we could see that coming. The traffic volume on Green Street using this Highland Street connector has been greatly increased over the last 4 years since that bridge work was completed. Your traffic counts, if you care to take them, will clearly show that. And with the completion of the amphitheater and the picnicking area that we've had even before the amphitheater down in that park area, and the pedestrian movement from the upper square to the lower terrace area has been increasing all during this period of time and getting more and more use. And that pedestrian safety issue has grown in proportions to what it was when this thing first was recognized as a situation that needed to be addressed. What I would also like to take a moment to do is just to enlighten you a little bit about TE monies. As Charlie pointed out, it sort of puts the town between a rock and a hard place, because any proposal that you go forward with for a project, one, it has to be reasonably carefully crafted as to its cost and content. And two, the town, in putting forth that request for a grant, has to show good faith of providing the 20% that its share of whatever is granted would be. As Miriam pointed out, the timeline for TE money is not consistent with the town meeting process. And we've been caught up in that in the past with some of our earlier TE applications. North Country Council came to understand the dilemma that we faced in that regard. So basically, when you go forward with your proposal as a governing board, what you have to do is to commit to bring the monies to be provided by the town to the town meeting when that is scheduled. And in our case, that's in March. If you don't have that commitment to bring the matter before town meeting at that next town gathering, you won't even be considered for grant monies at all. In this case, it clearly is money that would come out of your budget for 2010, 2011. That's where you'd have to put the money forward to town meeting to support this project if they're willing to support it. The federal money that would be available for the 80% share we'd be reimbursed does not become available to the state until October 1, which is the beginning of the federal fiscal year in 2010. So as it has been cited here, the project is really one that wouldn't take root until 2011 at the earliest. Another facet of this problem down here in this connector is the railroad crossing. I'm sure you've been across that crossing numerous times, and you've seen what deteriorated condition it's in. Back in 2004, when the bridge project was in place, we tried to get the New Hampshire Department of Transportation Railroad Division to come up with some money to correct that condition in conjunction with the bridge work and the improvements that were going to be completed on Green Street. As it turned out, the state recognized in 2004 that they were greatly overcommitted for capital expense and for money that they didn't have in their capital appropriations. And the rail division, although they thought they could probably provide us with money, came back to tell us that no money was available to make those improvements. With this TE money is primarily earmarked for new sidewalks. The money can't be used to repair existing sidewalks. You might ask then, why can it be used to repair this rail crossing? Brian Lombard, the person who supervises the rail operations and capital investments made on the rails, has indicated that he would give a letter of endorsement to any proposal the town put forward to get that money approved to make the rail crossing improvements that need to be made. I do not feel, based on his earlier review of that crossing, that it requires replacement of ties or new ballast, but it does require removal of what crumbling asphalt is in place between the rails to be replaced by fresh bituminous concrete. And he provided us with specifications as to how that's to be done in conjunction with the booted arrangement that you see down at the 175 crossing, which he wanted to have installed at this crossing. And he also was insistent upon another catch basin being installed at the foot of the hill to capture runoff and to lay in asphalt to remove some of the erosion that was occurring over on the north side of that roadway. And as a result of his request, your prior highway department manager did in fact extend the pavement, did put in a swale, and they did place a new catch basin to largely take care of the immediate problem that he was concerned with. Again, having said that, there are 3 dysfunctional catch basins in that area. And the water pools in front of the senior center entrance. In the plan that we had crafted back in 2005, that roadway was going to be overlaid to eliminate that pooling condition and to reset the catch basins that are in that area so that they would perform as they were intended to perform.
Bill, could I just, how much was your initial pass at this? It was a lot more of a draft. So your plan at revamping this area was how much a few years ago?
The costs were not laid out. We were doing it incrementally as town monies and time were available to do it. The catch basin was installed from appropriated storm drainage maintenance monies, and that situation was taken care of. The striping of the roadway was taken care of. The amosite that was put down to widen the roadway to catch that water that was eroding down the hill, the banking, again, that came from highway maintenance materials that were obtained in the normal course of making other street repairs during the course of that particular summer season.
Okay.
So the costs were pretty small, and the solution was based on basically striping, adding pavement, and correcting existing poor pavement conditions at the crossing.
Okay.
Again, I will tell you, TE money today cannot be used to improve roadway pavement surfaces.
Got it.
It can be used only for curbing and for sidewalks.
I guess what I was getting at, Mr. Chair, from what the question was that worst case scenario is we allocate the $250,000, right? Our town meeting does that. The TE money is denied. We then instead of we proceed with these improvements according to the report that says this is a crisis area, but we can do it in a much cheaper way if we had to do it without the T&E funds.
In a nutshell, it seems to me what we've got to do if we want to move this project forward, which is a 10-11 budget year, is make a commitment to provide $50,000 in highway funding for sidewalks for the 10-11 budget.
Are we all through the public, Pat?
Are we what?
Are we all through the public?
No, I don't think so. I don't know. Frank wants to talk, but let me just put it to see if I can. If the town commits, if the board makes a motion to provide $50,000 in highway department funding for the 10-11 budget year for sidewalks, new sidewalks, then basically you'll have what you want to go after this grant.
No, I think she needs that now. You need the $50,000 in the 9-10 budget, which you have.
Well, we have that.
You need to show.
But we're not going to spend it.
I think on the warrant she needs $250.
But she can't use that $50,000 the way Mr. Hu, the way I understand from Mr. Hu. You cannot use that TE, the $50,000 that has been allotted for repairs and improvements on sidewalk for this project, because this project
it's all new
for new sidewalk.
Right.
That's correct.
But we're way out of sync on this whole thing. We're talking a different year. My concern is I don't want to mess with the highway department budget for 9-10. It's already in place, and this project wouldn't, but it seems we're going to have to commit to $50,000 in the 10-11 budget to make this grant possible.
That's a fair synopsis.
Right.
It doesn't
but I don't know if we can do that. Can the board do that? I mean, put it in a warrant article.
You make the good faith intent of putting it on the warrant for the town people to decide whether they want it or they don't.
Right.
And if they don't want it, you won't get the money.
So for us to move ahead with this, that's the motion that's got to pass this board tonight.
The motion, as I see it, is that you want to go forward with an application for a grant, whatever the amount is, and that you will commit to putting on the warrant the town's share of the money to support that grant.
Right.
But that would have to be in a different budget line, right? In other words, it would have to be specifically for new sidewalks.
You've got to warrant the whole thing. You have to warrant 250, not 50. Right. We've got to warrant 250.
Yeah, but of the 250, 50 of it would be for new sidewalks. Yeah. And we have to show a good faith effort to make that happen. Frank, do you have something you wanted to say?
Yeah.
Let's finish this.
Miller. The underlying document for this project that came up at 2004 is the Green Street project of 1995. And in that Green Street report, if you read it, you'll find that there was a list of projects that we had slated for Green Street. And one of them obviously was the new bridge, the new intersection, the boat launch, the courthouse, and the riverfront park. In the construction design location of the courthouse, the safety committee and the Green Street committee realized, along with the state, whoever was the proponent of the courthouse, recognized the impact of the railroad crossing at the senior center for pedestrian and vehicles due to increased traffic. As a result, there was, as it states in the Green Street report, an agreement by the selectmen at the time to the court, facility managers, whoever obligates purchasing and constructing that courthouse, that the state was going to upgrade the railroad crossing for pedestrians and that crossing. Obviously, for the same budget reasons we had with the building of the bridge, whatever the mechanics of their financing was, they did not have the money and did not follow through. I don't have a copy of the agreement that was signed and agreed to by the selectmen and the state courthouse system for the specific agreement that they had agreed to do that off-site improvement because they knew they were going to impact the traffic flow on Green Street. If you want to have an overview of why we're here, the Green Street report, I would recommend you read. Thank you.
Well, it seems to me that if we moved to provide a board warrant article in the 10-11 budget for $50,000 in new sidewalks, that would meet the requirements for this grant.
You'd have to make it for 250,000.
No, why would we have to do 250? She's going to apply for the 250, but she's got to have the 50,000 in her pocket.
You have to grow the budget.
No, because we have to, it's a refundable thing. We have to pay the 250,000 and then they'll pay back the 200,000. So we have to have a warrant for, right?
We
For
have to grow the budget.
$250,000.
But we will know if we've been awarded the grant before the warrant goes before town meeting. So we'll be able to say with the...
Yeah,
right.
But we do have to have the $250,000.
But we don't, the warrant's going to go before town meeting for what, 200 or 250,000? 250.
And it doesn't say new sidewalks, so it would say $250,000, I would think, for the transportation enhancement grant.
Yeah, okay. But that grant has got to stipulate that $50,000 has been budgeted for highway department.
No, they needed to see that.
Sidewalk
They needed to see that number now.
$1,000. What I'm writing the grant right now is just that we have the good faith intent of putting that on the town warrant.
Right. So that's what this board has to provide, the good faith intent.
Right.
Because...
Which we already have, in a way.
Well, we have it this year, but we don't have it for the year she's talking about. And the money we have this year, we're not going to spend on new sidewalks for this thing because it'll be too late.
You couldn't have zero in your budget. You couldn't have zero in your sidewalk budget right now. You have to have 50.
Yeah. Well, we've got $60,000.
Right.
Which is how you can apply.
What you're going to have to do is you're going to have, if you want to continue your $50,000 for repair and improvement of sidewalks, that's going to be one line on the thing, and then you're going to have
50,000 for new.
No,
250,000. Okay.
For this particular project.
Which in the 250,000 would include 50,000 for new sidewalks.
Yeah.
We would know before that town meeting whether we got the grant or not. Is that right?
Right.
So then you would be able to say that's offset 200,000 if it's offset.
Somebody can figure this out. You want to put a motion together?
I would caution you against making that presumption. Ideally, the Gassett Committee goes to the legislature in February to try and get that decision made. But if you look at the track record, more often than not, it's not made until late March or April.
So there would be
Okay.
no guarantee that the grant would be going through, right? At the time of town meeting.
That's correct.
So if you didn't get the grant, you don't spend the money.
The warrant article could be contingent on the grant.
Right.
And you know, as I say, on the, now, the new sidewalks, how does that play with that piece of sidewalk in front of the old Plymouth Inn? 'Cause that's an existing sidewalk. That's not new sidewalk.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Would you sneak
Okay.
that in, or is that
The
something?
majority of the project has to be new sidewalks,
Yeah,
but you
okay.
can also do improvements and widening as part of it, and do the railroad crossing as part of it.
All right.
But the centerpiece is the new sidewalks.
So,
Okay, so you can continue on sidewalks here too, that's fine.
so what we need is a motion for $250,000 in the 10-11 budget, a warrant articles, a Board of Selectmen warrant article for $250,000.
This board's agreed to put a warrant article for 2,000.
Right.
First you apply, so first we move to apply.
Right.
And then during
So who wants to put that together?
the motion
can't-
to apply.
We need a,
First the motion to, so that Miriam
we
moves
need a
toward the-
motion to
Apply
to
for the-
apply.
apply for the grant.
So I move that we apply for a transportation enhancement grant to fund sidewalk and road improvements along the South Main Street, Green Street, and Highland Street extension.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we apply for the transportation enhancement grant for $250,000.
Then that has to be guaranteed not to go over $250,000. Because they have a great question about that retaining wall and about a lot of utility lines underneath it, which Mr.
So-
Wu indicated last time. So there has to be a guarantee.
What we can do is this motion has been made, and then as we get into the final details, we can actually put that as a stipulation.
Right, right.
Right, the warrant article usually would say not to exceed the amount of, the
Okay.
Department of Revenue would require that anyway,
And that would,
not to exceed.
that would be for the whole project.
Right, you have to gross appropriate the whole project,
For the
no
whole
matter what the
project.
reimbursement
You
is.
can't crib on that project once that has been
Even if it's
granted.
100% reimbursable, you still have to put the full amount down.
Right, so there is a possibility that the town, unless you had that stipulation, would have to pay more than the $50,000. But if you have that stipulation, you cannot crib and say, I'm not going to finish that project. Right?
So we have a motion to apply for a transportation enhancement grant, the amount of $250,000.
$200,000.
Was it 200 or 250?
The grant is $200,000.
But you have to vote for $250,000.
Okay.
We have to go for the
250,000 for the total project.
Is that a second motion, or is that included in,
It has to be the 250, no. It
has to be
one
for-
motion.
The motion is to apply.
Right, to apply for a $250,000 grant.
okay. So the motion is to apply for transportation enhancement grant for $250,000 with a Green Street, Highland Street extension improvements.
I second the motion.
We have a motion by Valerie Scarborough, seconded by
I already seconded it.
Cushing.
Oh, you did already?
Oh, okay, seconded by Darrell. Those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? The motion passes. You can go for your grant. Don't come back without the money. That's all we say. All right. That seemed to be a long, protracted way to come to a simple conclusion. Yeah. All right. That, I think, concludes What'd you do with my agenda, John?
Thanks.
All right, what else do we have? Departments, correspondence. All right, is there any public comment on anything? Mr. Houle?
I was curious in your consideration of the 11th police officer grant that was brought before you. On what basis did the evaluating agency determine Plymouth's eligibility vis-a-vis the other towns that were under consideration? And specifically, did that weight heavily the statistical history of the town of Plymouth in the police department?
I don't think so. I think there's 6 columns and 52 or 58. You went through the, why don't you explain? But this is the document that goes across the top. And I think the deciding factor was the crime and community policing index percentile, which we came out at 75.2. But
I can just, in general, address it, Mr. Houle. The key policy question that the Department of Justice used in allocating the funds was how to balance economic factors against reported crime and community policing factors. And all of those, they had questions on the grant application that basically addressed all of those issues. And then they weighted the values of fiscal distress against reported crime and the community policing strategies, and then each individual question was assigned a score based on the overall weight in each category, and they came up with a point scale, a 100-point scale. And then they also had 2 categories of award recipients that were towns less than 150,000 and towns larger than 150,000. So all of the New Hampshire towns were in the smaller category. But when they, calculated out based on the weight of the responses to each question, the towns were assigned a score. And Plymouth came in 7th overall in the 12 New Hampshire towns that were awarded the grants.
Follow-up question, corollary to the one I just asked. Did that take into account the university police force?
The letter that I was led to believe played a major factor in the crime and community policing index, I would say it didn't. I think the town, the total population of the town, namely 6,800 people or whatever it is, including the university, didn't put the university in as a separate entity, or even it didn't even show it as a factor, did it, Paul?
No.
So, as far as they were concerned, I mean, without there was mention of the university, the police departments working with the university on various, they were on committees up there. But I think if you look at the way the grant was presented, it was for a town of 6,800 people, period, without really bringing the university into it and their 11 or 12 officers.
I just remind this board that when I sat on the governing board back in 1999, when we were talking to Dr. Wharton about the university policing public safety organization he had, one of the arguments for seeking to arm those university police and to require them to go through the police standards training program down in Concord was for the purposes of trying to get a fully qualified police organization at the campus to support and integrate with the town's police agency. And I think that has been accomplished to a very large degree in what has transpired in the last 9 years.
Yeah, I mean, the university back in the 80s, when my two kids were there, they had a security force. You had security guards. They didn't have police officers, and they've gone to completely certified police officers. But when I read one of the letters that was supposed to be a major factor in this community policing index, it did not mention the university. It was, and that's one of the problems we have. The Census Bureau treats Plymouth as a town with 6,800 people in it, which is not true. I don't even know if anyone has a handle on exactly how many people the Census Bureau has decided are Plymouth residents, full-time residents. I don't think it's a factor. So we're a town of 6,800 people, and we have a police force with 10 officers, and it doesn't mention the fact that there is another police force that's fully qualified, armed to the teeth, and ready to go with another 11 or 12 people. So that might have tinted the crime and community policing index to some extent. Probably lowered it by 4 or 5 points.
How many authorized university police are there at this point in time?
I don't know. What do you have, 11?
I think we say we're about 10 as well.
10 or 12. You've got quite a few part-time that...
Parking enforcement person.
Yeah. Which is fine. I mean, if you use that as a factor in the overall policing requirements in Plymouth, it significantly changes the rules as far as I'm concerned.
Absolutely.
Can I just ask a process question, which is why you made a decision here tonight rather than going to public hearing, which is what most of the other towns are doing? Taxpayers and townspeople didn't have any opportunity to hear the chief make his case, and didn't have any opportunity to weigh in on whether they wanted to accept the $200,000 over the next 4 years. So I'm just curious as to why we didn't go to public hearing before you made your decision.
Well,
That would be the right thing to do.
I guess because we could, is the answer.
We would have gone to a special town meeting had we voted.
Had we voted in favor of it, it would have had to have gone to...
Had to go public.
I know, you have to have a public hearing to have the special town meeting to accept the money.
But you don't have to have the
But
public
you
hearing.
could have had a public hearing to find out what people thought about it. It wasn't even discussed in a regular select board meeting. It was discussed in a work session that wasn't advertised at the previous meeting. And as a public information person, I object to that.
We had a work session that was published.
The public has not had an opportunity to have a say. That's my point.
They had the ability to come to that special meeting.
That was referred to in the previous select board meeting, which I attended, didn't put in the paper because it wasn't mentioned on the agenda. I happened to notice that it was posted in the town hall, but nobody else knew anything about it. There was no way for the public to come and weigh in on it, and that is not a good public relations strategy. It's my only concern.
All right. I do know that in the previous meeting, before our work session, the previous week, that it was announced, that it was going to be discussed.
Well, we announced the work session, and that the work session was specifically for, we announced it at the...
It was not on the agenda, and you mentioned all the other work sessions. You mentioned this work session, but you did not mention this work session.
Well, we announced the work session on the 17th.
It's in the minutes, but that's not the agenda, Paul. It's on the agenda.
But the minutes came from the agenda.
No, it was not. I have the agenda. It was not on the agenda. I'm sorry. It's just, it doesn't matter. I'm just saying that for public relations and for consideration of the townspeople and the public employees who worked very hard to get this money in the first place, they ought to have a chance to present their case before the public. That's my only problem.
We made an announcement of work session specifically to discuss that issue. And work sessions are open to the public, and the only people who showed up were the police department.
Frank was here.
Frank was here. Were you here? Okay, you were here. And how many police officers? Everyone, just about.
A lot.
Yeah, both are. A lot.
Thin blue line.
All right, we don't have any non-public issues, do we? There being none, I'll entertain
I make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion's been made to adjourn, by John Kelly, seconded by Darrell. Those in favor? Aye. Meeting's adjourned.